Hey, welcome to Greg's Maker Corner. In this video, I'm going to be just covering how to install Neopixels into the Voron Stealthburner. I know that you can buy pre-made harnesses, and that works pretty well, but if you don't want to buy the pre-made harness and you want to solder it, this is the tutorial for you. This is part of my larger upgrade with the Voron 2.4 toolhead. I'm going to be going from a Voron 2.4 beta that I built close to 2 years ago and moving it into the latest version of the Stealthburner, adding tap and also adding CAN bus along with my LGX light. So stay tuned for the broader series. I thought it would be good just to have a quick tutorial on how to do the LEDs since that's the first step in my process. PCBWay is sponsoring this video series, and I've utilized PCBWay for several electronics projects over the years, including these custom PCB projects that you see here, and can learn more about building on my channel. PCBWay also lists a number of open source 3D printing projects where you combine 3D printing and electronics and custom PCBs. I really like this one here that is a filament maker from a PET bottle. In addition to having custom PCBs made, PCBWay also offers 3D printing, CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, and injection molding, so be sure to check them out. Thanks again as always for watching Greg's Maker Corner. For this project you're going to need the printed Stealthburner shroud here. You're also going to need some Neopixels or equivalent. I got mine from West 3D and I'll have the link in the description. You'll need some flush cutters, some tweezers. I recommend a wire cutter. A pair of scissors is always handy. The soldering iron that I use is a Sacco model, and I recommend that. You definitely want something that can get hot enough. I use a 6040 rosin core solder. You can also use 6337. You can use lead-free solder if you really want to challenge, but I definitely recommend the leaded. It's a lot easier to work with. If you're using solder without flux, then you probably want some flux for the pads. And of course, you're also going to need some wiring. I use some 24 gauge FEP wiring, which I had left over from another project. It's also good to print out this little diffuser part. I had some clear PET G that I used, and that's something that's going to help just with the look of it from the center of the tool head. I also recommend using this little Stealthburner jig, and this is linked from the Voron site, but I'll put the link in my description as well. And it allows you to easily solder. You're also going to need a length of about 120 to 130 millimeter wire for the tool head, and then 2 lengths of 3 wires that are about 100 millimeters long. And this is based on the Stealthburner manual. And before you start soldering, you're going to need to trim the ends of your wires. You only need a little tiny bit. And I'm going to use these auto wire strippers. That's probably about right. If you get it too long, you can always just use some scissors to trim the tip, but you don't want this going much beyond the pad. So just go ahead and do that with all of your wire ends. Rather than show this repeatedly in the video, I'm going to just show it once on how to solder, and then I'll kind of summarize the steps as I go through the video. First thing you want to do is you want to take your solder, and this is going to be true for all of the pads for each Neopixel, and you're just going to need to get a little bit of this solder on the pad. Now if you have flux, and if you get a bridge like that, just wipe it away. You don't want too much solder on there. You want just enough, about like that. And for all but the last Neopixel, you don't need to do the D out on the last Neopixel, but it doesn't hurt if you do. So this is about what you want it to look like. If you get a little bit of extra solder on there, it's okay. You can easily wick it off or use a tool like a solder sucker that I have here. If you've never used one of these, it's pretty easy. You just push it down. Let's say I want to remove some solder or all of it. I just do that and it pulls it right off. You can also use wick, but what you don't want to do, just some general tips, you don't want to hold your soldering iron on here for more than maybe 1 to 2 seconds, because that's going to cause those pads to lift. So be very careful. That's just some general prep on how to do this. The next step, you're going to go ahead and take your wire and you're going to tin the tip of it. And what I mean by that is you're going to get this solder here, and then you're just going to put a good coating on it. That's it. That's all you got to do. Just roll a little bit. Make sure that your tip, the tip of your wire, is not too long. In this case, it looks fine. And then you're just going to come in here, make sure we're on the 5 volt and the plus, which we are, and you're going to just gently touch that, maybe for 1 second. If you're finding that your wire's lifting up, you can hold it like this. And then you're just going to repeat that for each of these wires. And you just need to make sure that you have the right layout for these. If you notice that things aren't looking quite as good, like maybe there's not enough solder on there, go ahead and just add some more. That's all you got to do. And we'll repeat this one for the black. Just kind of set it in that slot. If you're having problems positioning it, just grab your tweezers, and then there you go. Make sure there's nothing dull when you inspect your joints. If there is, like this black one, does look a little bit dull. So I'm just going to come over and I'm going to just touch it up. But I get a good solder joint there. Now as you inspect this, I noticed that the purple one was a little further on the board. The wire jacket was a little bit longer than I want. So I'm actually going to just pull that one up and I'm going to trim it a little bit. And then I'm going to come back in and just resolder it back down. There we go. Make sure that you don't have any metal, any solder that's touching where you don't want it to be touching. So it should only be touching the pads that you intend to solder it to. And make sure that your plus is your red, your minus is your black, and then you've got your purple. And make sure they're in this orientation as well. So the wires should be coming this way. And then we're gonna, next up, we're just gonna repeat the process and we're gonna lay them the same way for this next connection. All right, I went ahead and tinned the wire, just like I did previously. And these are the shorter wires, but these are gonna go to the next LED, or Neopixel. And I'm gonna go ahead and just solder these up, similar to what I did in the previous one. Okay, and I'll show this on camera. You can see I got nice shiny joints. Just double check that everything looks nice and shiny. Double check that you don't have anything, any bridges touching, and we should be good. We can go ahead and solder the next Neopixel up. So on this one, make sure that, like I said, the shorter wire, which is from your out, you can see it's labeled out. These are going to go to the in on the next one. So make sure you get that oriented properly. So the in is right here, D in, and then 5-volt signal in middle, just like the last one. Just gonna repeat the same process, tin the pads. Okay, I went ahead and touched these up and those look pretty good. And then I'm just going to now add the next wires, which are going to go from the D out, and they're gonna go this way. Make sure you keep your tip clean. I've got some cleaning brass that I use. And we'll just come down here. Here's a close-up. Everything looks pretty good. And for the last one, it's pretty much the same process. Except this one, you only need to do the DN pads. I'm just gonna go ahead and tin those. So I'm taking the wire from the D out, the one I just did. So you can see here's the first one. This goes to the tool head. This goes to the Neopixel. And then this one goes to the Neopixel. And we're just going to solder to the DN. So the DN is the red. At this point, you should have everything soldered up looking like this. And next up, I'm just going to insert it into the shroud. I haven't inserted anything else in here yet, like the fan, but that's not necessary. So the first thing is you want this diffuser in here. This can be a little tricky to get in, but I'm going to try my best here. And then it should fit right in. You might want to just push it down with a hex tool like this. And then just kind of confirm it looks like that. Okay, now we've got just enough room and we're going to fit, I already put this on the carrier, but there is this 3D printed carrier here that's going to slide into there. You're going to fit it like this in this orientation where the wires are coming out that way. And then with any luck, it should slide right in. All right, so yep, it's a nice snug fit. I just pushed it right in and we're good to go there. These two LEDs are going to feed through these channels and then be inserted just right in here. Before we route the wiring, we're going to go ahead and remove these built-in supports with some flesh cutters. Let's go ahead and do that. And then there's also locations here and here where you need to cut. Just makes it easier to run that wiring. And just kind of clean that out so you can lay the wire down. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it. All right, for the tool head wiring, we're just gonna run this kind of up here. We'll deal with that later. And then you're going to take the next Neopixel in the line and just slide it into here. But all the wiring should fit nicely in here. And feel free to use tweezers if you got big sausage fingers like I do. Might make the job a little bit easier. You can even do one at a time like that. Just put it in and tuck it. And then when you wire this in, make sure you go behind this channel here that we just removed. Now this is going to go, should just fit right in there. It should slide right in. There we go. And push it all the way down. And then we're simply going to carry this over through and kind of through the channel. And just repeat the same process. Slide this LED in here all the way down. It should be a snug fit. There we go. Okay, we don't really want this excess wire poking up here. And if you remember, we broke this tab, and that was why we did that, so we can run it down here. All right. Now at this point, if you want to test this, you can go ahead and crimp on your connector. Now, in some cases, you're going to need to crimp to a tool head. In other cases, you're going to run this directly all the way, but I would put a connector on it either way. So I'm just going to crimp whatever connector that CAN bus board needs. I think it's a JSTXH, but you got to be really careful. Make sure that when you crimp it on, you crimp the red and the black, so the 5 volt, the negative, and the signal. You want to make sure that is in the correct order because you don't want to fry your LEDs.